This summer for my long retreat, I drove out to Boston. The retreat house was north of Boston on the Atlantic Ocean. And as I drove, I took the across Ohio, up the Pennsylvania Turnpike, across New York, and then the Massachusetts Turnpike. And it was an incredible drive just to see the highway system, how I could get from point A to point B in 15 hours. But especially when I went through upstate New York, I spent a long time going alongside the Erie Canal. And the Erie Canal is also something quite fascinating. I don't know if you're familiar with the Erie Canal. It was built in the 1820s, or not really built, but crafted, I guess you could say, between Buffalo on Lake Erie and basically Albany on the Hudson River. It was a monumental feat at that time. And it was huge because it allowed the United States, one, to really develop as a country, to expand westward, to economically advance. Now goods and trade could occur between the East Coast and the Midwest. Basically, New York City would become, because of the Erie Canal, an international center of commerce, as New York on the Hudson River was now connected to the Midwest, the Atlantic Ocean and the Great Lakes. And New York, this is the reason why it would be called the Empire State, as the United States now, in large part because of the Erie Canal, was able to really be an empire. They were able to control the land. And the Erie Canal, which is, I believe, over 350 miles long, it goes through hills and valleys and dense forests. Again, it was just an incredible thing to accomplish. You can't help but think of the Erie Canal, or at least I couldn't, when I hear Isaiah prophesy about the valleys and the hills being made a smooth way for the Lord, the King, to travel. Ancient Israel had a similar impressive means of transportation. In fact, the whole ancient world did, and these were the Roman roads. We're all somewhat familiar, I think, from basic history. All roads lead to Rome. The Romans had a fairly sophisticated one way of constructing roads, but connecting all parts of the empire. So the empire can be controlled, but also so trade and commerce could flourish throughout, again, the entire empire, which spanned Europe, North Africa, and Asia Minor and the Middle East. Well, there are two main roads in ancient Israel. The first was the Via Maris, which went along the Mediterranean Sea, north and south. And then the second road was a road that led up out of Egypt to the east of the Jordan River, running north to Damascus, and then veering off northeast to Babylon, to Iraq, the Euphrates, the Tigris. That road was called the King's Highway. It was a very ancient road. In fact, the Israelites, when they were led out of slavery in Egypt by Moses to the Promised Land, could have taken the King's Highway to get home, but instead they didn't. They refused, and they wandered 40 years in the desert. It'd be like if I didn't take the turnpike and tried to take back roads out to Boston. I probably would still be driving and would have ended up in New Orleans or something. That's what happened to the ancient Israelites. Well, 700 years later, they find themselves, the Israelites do, in another captivity. And this is where Isaiah the prophet comes in. He tells them, look, just like God took you out of slavery in Egypt the first time, now he's going to do it a second time. He's going to take you out of slavery in Babylon, in the north, not in the south, but in the north. It's going to be a second exodus. And you're going to be able to travel now the King's Highway, that same King's Highway that led to Jerusalem, up from Egypt and also down from Babylon. You're going to be able to travel that King's Highway. And you won't get lost like your ancestors did if you follow the king who's going to be marching on that highway back to Jerusalem. God, Isaiah prophesies, the king is going to be leading the way with his army to the heart of Jerusalem. Well, here we are now, 2,000 years later. We are the New Jerusalem. And God, Jesus Christ the King, is marching that road with his army of angels and saints. Not to the city of Jerusalem, but to the New Jerusalem, the church, and also each one of our hearts. Yes, God is marching. John the Baptist is telling us this. As you all know, the Baptist is the forerunner. So, in ancient Rome, the legions, the Roman army would march on these roads, and often the emperor, in fact, himself would march with the army. And when the emperor was marching, there would be a forerunner, of course, announcing, look, the emperor is coming. Well, John the Baptist is that forerunner announcing that the king is coming. John the Baptist is a prophet of the road. This is why he's dressed in camel fur. A camel traveled the road. If John were to come today, instead of dressing like a camel, he would have dressed like a car or a plane or a truck. So it's like he was showing that he was this means of transportation. He also ate locusts and wild honey. This is the food of travelers. Again, to use modern terms, if John were to come today, he would be eating Slim Jims and corn nuts and drinking 5-hour energies. The food and drink of gas stations on the turnpike, right? So John is indicating to us that, look, God's coming. Now, the reason why this fills us with hope is because if you go to the Erie Canal today, like I did, or the King's Highway in ancient Israel, you see an era or a relic of the past. So the Erie Canal, it reached its peak, if you will, I think in like the 1850s. 1855 might have been when it had the most commercial shipping being conducted. Well, with the invention of the railroad, and then, of course, the airplane, and then Amazon, so massive delivery. And think about the name Amazon, literally cutting through the jungles to deliver all sorts of shipping to our homes impressively. The Erie Canal became obsolete. And so as I was driving along the Erie Canal, from Buffalo and then those towns, they looked towns of the past. There were even, some of them were run down. They looked, again, just like Lockport. They weren't flourishing anymore. Time had passed them by, abandoned, desolate. So, and the King's Highway in Israel, too, is just kind of a dirt road now. A lot of those Roman roads have been overgrown. Now, when we're baptized and we're confirmed, something monumental happens, like the construction of the Erie Canal a century and a half ago, or the King's Highway 5,000 years ago. An Erie Canal, King's Highway is built into our soul. Now, this doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's huge, right? We can't do this on our own, our fallen human nature, but God does this with his grace of the sacraments. And so now God is able to come. God himself, think about this, God himself is able to dwell in our souls. And we likewise are able to traverse that Erie Canal, that King's Highway, to the heart of God. Again, something very impressive. But what happens is, over time, with us growing in age and developing in the world around us, that highway can become abandoned or desolate or obsolete. And so if you're today finding yourself in this place that, man, my highway is overgrown and there's no way God is walking to me, or there's no way I'm going to walk to God, I feel my prayer is very dry, or I just feel frustrated with myself or with the world or with the church, just don't feel like I'm connected, united to God. Well, John the Baptist is telling you, no, your Erie Canal, the canal in your heart is alive and it's functioning as much now more than ever. The King with his army is marching into your soul, and he's going to set your world and your life on fire. Amen.